Welcome to Mom Breaks. This episode features Colin, who joined his wife Megan to share their story back in episode 13. So if you missed that one, I recommend going back and starting there because this conversation builds on that one. Colin is a dad of 3, a professional, he's a leader in his work life, and a pseudo-advocate for postpartum psychosis. Megan and Colin have shared their stories in many places, and I appreciate the work they've done to raise awareness and advocate for better definitions and understanding of postpartum psychosis. So here we, as a little recap, 8 months after the birth of their second baby, they were living in New York City at the time, and Megan was hospitalized for what they were told was maybe bipolar in Bellevue Hospital in New York City, and it wasn't till later after discharge that she was given the words postpartum psychosis, or they were given the words postpartum psychosis. Colin describes what felt like a sudden flipping of the table, where everything was turned upside down and reality fractured. There were various delusions and eventually a call to the NYPD. Colin shares a question he had to confront, which was, if I make this call, am I ruining our family forever? In this conversation, we hear more about juggling many balls at once from the partner perspective, what it was like to be punched in the face by your person, how to manage 2 workplaces with your spouse being in a psych hospital, and navigating police and hospital systems generally. So Colin also shares what it was like to process varied emotions that don't disappear just because you and your partner survive the experience. We hear about therapy, about how the experience impacted approaches to leadership and parenting and compassion for others' journeys. And I loved in Colin's words, how to handle being given a pile of shit and finding growth and learning from the experience. So this episode does include a discussion of suicidal delusions, physical violence during psychosis, and police involvement. So take care while listening. We know a bit about you. You have 3 kids, you have a lovely wife, you have a career, and you lead teams. I guess share another layer of roles or parts of your life that are central to who you are.
Yeah, good question. I think some of this was covered previously, but for me, I think it's really starts with my kids and my wife and my family. As they've grown older, that being such a big part of my life has just grown more and more, which has been really exciting. While trying to also find things for myself along the way, whether it's my obsession with Boston sports, doing whatever I can to get outside as much as humanly possible, and frankly, my obsession with how can I travel as much as possible for as little money as possible.
On a dime.
My side hustle and obsession with credit card points and miles to ensure that now not only that Megan and I can travel for free, but now an entire family to travel. So that's sort of my other sort of major obsession for the past, I would say at the moment, but it's really the past several years. So,
I think my husband and you would have
yes,
a conversation there on point. He's constantly like, there's this card, like we should fold it in.
exactly. Yes, we would get along quite well.
So the Boston sports, did you have a tie to Boston, or is that?
I was born and raised in New Hampshire, though, 2.5 hours from the city. I was fortunate enough, my grandparents had season tickets to the Red Sox and to the Patriots. And so my world with my dad and my grandparents revolved around a lot with Boston sports. So my obsession started very young, and I have deeply ingrained that into my own children. Although now it's essentially myself, my 3 children are all now Boston sports fans, and my wife sits alone as the lone Cleveland quasi sports fan.
Quasi. Is your extended family also avid Boston sports fans?
Yeah.
Through the childhood, cool.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so you shared parts of your story with Megan on the show. You shared how your life in New York City looked, both working full time, having your second baby. Going back to that postpartum period, what were your expectations?
I think in particular for Millie, our second child. We had already had June, who was a year and a half old when Millie was born. Our expectations were, you know, we were living the expectations every day, which was this is going to be a shit ton of work. And it's
Uh,
just like, we're now going to be adding this like extra wrinkle of a second child into the mix. But we were still out and about in the city. We were still doing these things. And so I think we had an expectation that we could still hold on to some glimmer of our pre-baby life in New York City because we had been doing it with our first child. Uh,
uh-huh.
we probably thought a lot about like, this is going to be hard, probably not sustainable to be in our living environment forever, but that through relentless hard work, we could overcome whatever was going to be thrown our way and just sort of handle it by waking up early or doing more, logging off of work, logging back on to work. The postpartum thing felt like, hey, we can do this if we just work hard enough to do it. And I think from a partner perspective, for me, that was like both because I'm a human being, but also because we had a first baby. I knew like, all right, I need to go like above and beyond. Megan's going to be going through a lot postpartum. I need to be stepping up more and owning fully like all the stuff with our first child, June. I'll take on more of the pickups, the drop-offs, the
Okay.
feedings of these things. And so it's like, but it all felt like it's a lot, but we/I can do it if I try absolutely hard enough to do it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's tricky because that shows adaptability and resilience, right? Like you want that attitude of like, I can figure out and
Yeah.
be confident in myself. But also as you look back, what would you tell yourself in that period?
That you can't just do it through your grit and hard work. And it gets you a lot, it gets you a lot of the way there. I would tell myself, don't be so prideful. There was too much of trying to hold on to like the pre-baby life. There's too much of a
Oh,
reluctance to acknowledge that we probably need help here. And there was too much of, I got it. I don't need help. I don't need to call in, for the troops for extra support. Not that we had family support nearby, but I think it would be like, you know, admit when shit is really overwhelming and you need help and try to find ways to do it. And that might mean small changes to your life. That also might mean major changes to your life that are needed to like put you and your family in a better position.
when you say you were sort of holding on to this idea, the pre-baby life, did that look like saying yes to social commitments and staying engaged in different communities that maybe you could have slowed down and said no?
Yeah, I think it's a couple things. It's definitely a social aspect for sure. Like
Okay.
some of the best parts about living in New York City are the restaurants and bars to check out, which are ever evolving, and you want to go to the newest one and check out
Mm,
the new rooftop garden in Brooklyn and do XYZ things. And it's like, we still want to do that. So let's do it. There's a social aspect of like capitalizing on what is an
New
incredible
York
New York
City.
City life.
Yeah.
Right? I think it's wanting to like hold on to like we can still be these really good workers who produce at high levels and are doing important work, at a super high level. So I think there's a social piece, there's a work piece, and just to show that we don't have to be this like, oh, we retreat to the burbs as soon as we have the kids, we can still do the city life thing. And boy, were
Uh,
we, boy, were we wrong.
yeah. The verbs are pretty good. They're
Yeah,
feeling
it turns
pretty
out
good.
turns out it's pretty great actually, and it's served us well. And it turns out you really need family support and community of any kind.
Yeah.
Support, trying to have two kids in a 700 square foot apartment with a 90-pound
Mm.
dog is not sustainable.
Oh, wow. I didn't remember the dog factor. That's a thing. Did you both take leave at the same time or stagger your leave or how did that work?
Yeah, I feel very fortunate that every job I've had for all three kids, I've had either 10 or 12 weeks of paid leave, which
Okay.
Megan never had, which is like
Oh. Oh,
embarrassing.
because she was in education.
You'd think by working for the Department of Education in New York City, that might be one that gave you paid leave, but no. So yes, I had paid leave. For each of our kids, we overlapped for like a week, maybe a week and a half. Then she took her unpaid leave 12 or 16 weeks, and then I took the rest of my 10 or 12 weeks post. So we mainly
Oh.
did staggering, which was great. And I have to say, like, was one of my most favorite times. It can be hard as the person who didn't give birth to the child, necessarily to always
Hmm.
like, what's my role here? How am I helping with this really tiny baby? They're breastfeeding, they're gonna be on mom all the time. And so those moments were like, hey, mom's at work. This is just me and you, pal. This is a really amazing opportunity for me to get closer with each of my kids. And I think in that time with Millie, for a second, it was, I had experienced it once and was really looking forward to it the second time, which was an amazing experience. But so, yeah, so long way of saying we staggered them
Yeah,
to try to
that's nice.
max out. Also, partly because like daycare is psychotically expensive in New York City. We could hold off on our first payment of daycare bills, so the staggering worked on multiple levels.
Yeah, yeah. So then when you were each taking your leave, you were juggling both kids.
No, when Millie was born,
Huh.
we was in daycare. So we would drop her off at daycare, but I would keep Millie.
I see.
Yeah.
Nice. So there was still structure for your first daughter.
Yeah.
That's nice. So then when because your experience, or at least for Megan, had kind of climaxed at 8 months. Is that
Yeah.
right? Eight
Yeah.
months? So when we think about first changes that felt unusual, you talked about your work trip where you hyper prepared and left food and clothes. Was that around the like you had noticed changes? Can you speak to the changes you had noticed in Megan?
I have a really hard time articulating or really remembering concretely like what it was in Megan that I saw that made me become just like crazy obsessive in planning pre this trip. It was just something I felt like it's not like it was this thing where she feels on the brink of anything. It just was like I'm going away on a work trip and leaving two little babies behind for one person to take care of. It's hard enough for two of us when two of us are there.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
But it wasn't my first work trip. I don't know concretely and specifically what it was. There wasn't a clear trigger or something I saw in Megan. There was something deep inside of me that was like, I'm going to prepare the hell out of this and get all the clothes lined up, the food planned out, sticky notes on everything by day. Everything's going to be easy as possible because I knew that leaving was going to be an incredible challenge. Was there something else deeper inside of me that like would rear its head 36 hours after I came home from my work trip? Maybe, but that wasn't my thinking at the time.
Right. It sounds like it was the energy you spoke to, this idea of if I get up earlier, work
Yeah.
harder, do all the prep before, it's going to be fine. We got this.
Yeah. If I work really hard, I can solve the problems before they become a problem.
Yeah. I mean, it's amazing that you did that. It sounds like a lot was going on for both of you.
Yeah. Some might call it over the top, and I'm not sure actually how helpful it was. That's the thing is like the return on investment of all the time I put into it. Is that really helping her? I don't know, but maybe I just didn't make myself feel better. Unclear, you know.
I imagine meals prepared is helpful for sure. Clothes, I mean, I don't know. But
Like I said, over the top. Yeah.
I mean, you're a thoughtful partner. To
Yeah.
me, that says you're thoughtful, you're engaged, you're leaning in, which is amazing. Okay, so then the 36 hours after your work trip, we said things suddenly toggled. Megan had gone out and come home, and she was seeing delusions on the TV screen. You were like, this is a normal night. Can you share about that evening?
Yeah, she was having delusions, but I was unaware. This would have been a Friday night. I came home from my work trip on a Thursday night. It didn't seem normal, but it also didn't feel like we were on the precipice of anything major. I never knew a human mind could flip in the way that it does with postpartum psychosis. It just felt unreal that somebody so quickly can just essentially become a different person. There was no sense that was coming or even anything well short of that. I think there was like, let's order food, but then she doesn't eat any of the food. And I was like, well, that's really weird. And a few comments about the show we were watching. I'm like, well, what is going on? Like, what? And just like, almost a need to put herself to bed. And I was like, maybe she's just super tired and who knows what,
Yeah.
just being cranky, but that's sort of it. So not entirely normal, but not some wild sort of known precursor to what was coming.
Yeah. So then you go to bed yourself and then you have an early morning wake up,
Uh,
right?
it really started because in the middle of the night, sometimes I look back on this, I'm like, I don't know how you don't see these things. It was early December, cold in New York City, and she had opened the windows It was freezing inside of our apartment, and she's trying to keep the windows open. I'm like, what are we doing? It's so cold in here. And she didn't tell me why. She was trying to keep gases from killing our kids inside of our apartment.
Uh-huh.
And so obviously I didn't know that piece, but that was like the big first step. When we have little kids, you wake up early every morning, regardless of day of the week. So we're up early, and immediately the behavior is just so different and so almost already far gone within minutes of waking up. Completely erratic behavior. And, over the course of the ensuing hours, just like escalated and escalated and escalated. But it basically, as soon as I woke up, it was very clear that something was like deeply, it took me maybe 5 or 6 minutes to realize like, oh, shit just hit the fan in some sort of way. I don't know what's happening, but definitely found out pretty early that next morning.
Can you say more to how you made sense of it?
I'm not sure I ever made sense of it. I would say how I came to tell that something was like deeply wrong. It was the way she was talking to the girls, and she was concerned about, they were just playing in the quote, air quotes bedroom, which was our walk-in closet, and like Megan trying to rescue them from there and make sure they're not like sort of suffocating in the closet and I'm like, what are you Megan? Like, they're just riding their little toy train around and playing in the closet. They're coming back out. And next thing, she's dialing our landlord, trying to buy our apartment. It's just like one crazy thing after another. I knew things were bad, but I couldn't make sense of it. It went from her erratic behavior that was sort of seemingly only impacting her, and me being like, what, trying to navigate physically and emotionally with her, to the point where her own safety and the safety of the girls felt like it was at risk. And that's when it grew to her repeated threats to head to the roof, seemingly to jump, to then her, and so me needing to block the front door so she can't get out of the apartment.
She was articulating the need to go to the roof and jump.
Yeah, yeah. And so, I need to go, I need to go to the roof. I need to go to the roof. I think it was just, I don't know if she said to jump, but why else would somebody who's absolutely in a purely psychotic state at that time go to the roof if not to jump? She wasn't explicitly stating that. And then I would prevent her from getting to the roof. It's a small apartment. She would turn one way in, one way out. And so she would turn right back around and try to head to the girls, try to get the girls and to grab them and go to the roof. I'd have to push her off and board myself up. It was just this constant back and forth from the door to the apartment to the door to our bedroom to keep her away from the roof, to keep her away from the kids, away from the roof, away from the kids. And she's like beating down the door.
And you had called a friend, right? Or a family member?
Called, and it's interesting. I knew this is the part that was like really scary. I think I'd mentioned previously, from my experience in the gun violence prevention world, I had done a lot of work with law enforcement, and that I saw a lot of, and had a decent understanding of the ramifications of what happens when law enforcement needs to get involved in mental health crises, domestic situations, sort of anything. And with that was also this deep level of confusion as to what she was going through and what she was doing. And so I didn't want to just call anybody, partly because it's hard to know who to call. So my first calls were to my sister-in-law, who is a social worker / therapist, and to basically, and then she wasn't able to answer. So our friend Mandy, who is also a social worker and a therapist, to try to get some help in understanding what was happening, not knowing who else to call, right? And again, this is where the lack of community and support kind of rears its head, was like, there's like literally like no one else to call who's local. And so trying to call people who have some mental health expertise and skills to try to help navigate that. I was able to get a hold of Mandy, our friend, social worker and therapist, and also got a hold, I ended up calling Megan's parents as well. I don't know what they live in Cleveland, which was an 8-hour drive. I don't know what I thought they could offer or do, but they actually
needed help.
They got on the phone with Megan. She was just talking complete nonsense. It was immediately her parents, who were at the time 74, were like, we're getting in the car now. We will be there in 8 hours.
Oh,
It took them about 1 second to realize this was
something
a
was,
bad situation.
yeah.
And so,
Wait, but you're making all these phone calls that morning amidst
yeah,
all
yeah.
of it. Were there waxing and waning? Were there moments where you're like, "Okay, I can make a phone call," or were you simultaneously blocking the door, calling someone?
Both. There was definitely, it's a good way of putting it, like a waxing and a waning for sure. There was definitely periods where she was researching something online about getting an app built. I took like the 45-second or 2-minute respite of letting her do her own thing, like either be with the girls or be on the phone with somebody. And then it would immediately pop back into much more aggressive posturing on her end. And then I would be on the phone and trying to battle, being like, okay, then it really peaked when I was on the phone with our friend Mandy, and could hear everything that was happening. And she was like, you need to hang up this phone and call 911 right now. Because in the middle of the thing, um, of this battle with Megan, I don't think I was, it really peaked for me when Megan punched me in the face twice. And
Oh yeah.
in her attempt to get back to the girls, she clocked me twice very hard.
Wow.
And so trying to navigate that with her, trying to be on the phone call, but hearing both because she is a therapist, but also because I think I just needed a third party validation that calling 911 was the right thing to do.
Yeah.
Even
Yeah,
though I had,
I'm curious about that. Like going to a mental health professional first, it makes sense.
yeah.
Do you think that's what you were looking for? Language, knowing what was happening and like a what do I do?
Yeah, I was hoping somebody, whether it be Holly, Megan's sister, or Mandy, our friend, again, both same profession, somebody to tell me, oh, this is what you're gonna want to do, or some sort of validation that what was happening was highly problematic and need to be addressed in some sort of. I was looking for them to name what was happening, give some advice, do something. Ultimately, the best advice and what I really needed was a validation and basically permission to call. I mean, it's funny, I'm like tearing up thinking about it right now. That phone call was awful. I sat there for so long. I wouldn't sit there. I was in the midst of an ongoing battle
Yeah.
while debating in my head, like, if I make this call, she may never have custody of the kids again. What if I do this? I don't know what she's going through. Are we somehow, is our fam, am I, by making this phone call, am I ruining the family forever? As you can imagine, it's a scary place to be.
Yeah.
I didn't want to lose her. I didn't want the girls to lose their mom. And yet, from my work with law enforcement, things can go haywire when law enforcement gets involved and potentially the courts and social workers. I didn't know what that outcome was, but I knew it had the potential to be a very negative one that could completely break up our family. All that was going through my head. And ultimately, I decided to make the call. And thank God I did. I'm not sure how much longer I had it in me to keep her away from the roof or the girls. So
What was the call like?
I don't really remember a lot of details. My volume was so loud in the way I was speaking to the person on the other end. It was almost as if like if I say this thing loud enough about the situation, the dire situation I'm in, it will help them come faster. It was something about my wife acting in this way, my address, please get here. I just remember saying, please get here. I wasn't yelling at her, but my God, my volume was so high because I wanted her to feel that like,
Urgency.
oh, go guys, don't go slow, go fast. Go fast to help out. When they arrived, it was interesting because or the apartment door opened into the kitchen and we were wrestling on the floor. I was trying to keep her away from the door. They opened it. They must have had a master
And
key.
they just come in? Like,
And they came in, but again, they don't know what they're looking at. They just see a man wrestling her. We were wrestling on the kitchen floor, and I had to convince them I'm not doing anything wrong.
ah!
She's the one. Please help her. Also, like I have two girls and the things, like please, whatever. And so, very quickly, based on her behavior, they realized she was the person who needed the help. And I wasn't committing a crime. It was a very intense moment. They opened the door and we're literally there on the floor wrestling, and I'm just screaming, "Take her." Yeah,
But it sounds like there's a little bit of a delay as they're trying to assess what's happening.
totally. But I think that in my mind, it probably felt like a long time. It was
Sure.
probably was quite short. Where like it didn't take a rocket scientist to understand that like this person was like completely unhinged and had basically no touch with reality based on her behavior. I mean, she was immediately screaming at them and saying some unkind things about law enforcement, which I don't think was helpful at the time. They got it pretty quickly. My big thing was I need to be able to get up because I plugged the girls into a Mickey Mouse or something on my computer in the bedroom. I really needed them to be ensure they didn't see their mom getting handcuffed by the NYPD,
Oh, wow.
carried out screaming. My goal was to get up as soon as possible so I could go in with the girls.
Wow.
And I think I sent in, there was a female police officer there. I think I sent her in first just to like, please make sure they don't come in here. I do not want them to see this. And so I think I sent her in first because they wouldn't let me go quite yet when Megan was still being so difficult. So that was so when the police arrived.
What was that like for you? Because you're restraining her, and then it sounds like the police are restraining her. Was there relief there?
Oh, yes, big time. I was like, she's safe and she is at least in somebody else's hands who might know what they're doing and might be able to find her help in a way that I cannot. And I felt like the battle had ended and I was not yet breathing a sigh of relief, but I at least I was like, whew, like I somehow, whatever this is and we're going through, I survived at least phase one. I don't know what phase two and beyond is going to bring, but definitely feeling very relieved that somebody else was there to help.
And it was the NYPD that showed up.
Yeah. Yeah. NYPD. And then there was an ambulance as well. So presumably the FDNY.
Okay. And so then they take her away and you're at home. When did you get an update next? Where was the next connection for
Well,
you?
it was interesting because they said she will be taken to either Bellevue or Beth Israel, and somebody will be in touch. And several hours, 4 or 5 hours went by. I was there eating my lunch, trying to process what was happening. I got a phone call from the emergency attendant at Bellevue in the emergency room, not in the psych unit, asking me questions and providing an update, but basically had to sedate her, and she was kicking employees and just was like being very violent and physical with staff.
So that was the first update, was that she was being really violent.
Yes. And then so they did that. They sedated her and then moved her to the psych unit. And that was really the last time. This is Saturday morning. She didn't see a doctor. Turns out you don't want to go to a psychiatric unit
On a,
on
on a Saturday.
on a Saturday morning because you're not going to see anybody until at least Monday, in this case, Monday afternoon. So like the last time like a doctor had seen her was in the emergency room, but she was now in the psych unit at Bellevue of all places. And yeah.
First, just pausing. It is amazing how many hats or balls you were juggling. Not only the repercussions of law enforcement, but getting your kids set up so that their experience and Megan's experience and like, wow,
Yeah.
that is superhuman. As you look back, what would you say felt like the hardest moment versus the moment of greatest relief?
Through that phase, I think the hardest moment was actually the act of call 911 because
Okay.
because of what could come. I think when it comes to like her interaction behavior, it was so hard to figure out how this person who I knew 18 hours earlier before I went to work on that Friday was seemingly completely fine and normal and we're chatting and laughing and all the things could to the hardest part I think is to process what the fuck is going on, I would say. It's so for anybody who has not been a part of it on the partner side, it's so hard to describe how quickly that behavior can flip. It's like your dining room table just got completely flipped over in a second. It's almost as if like, am I in a dream slash nightmare? Like, is this actually real? Because it feels really fake. It feels like what I'm experiencing from this person is not actually happening, but it very much was.
When was the first glimmer of Megan being herself again?
This was probably the biggest point of relief. So she goes on a Saturday morning, doesn't see anybody till Monday afternoon. They said it was potentially like bipolar or something. She needed to take these meds. She refused to take the meds, refused.
Mm.
And her psychotic, sort of delusional behavior continued from Saturday morning through Wednesday night when we finally convinced her to take the medication. I started to explore what would it look like if I had to go to court to force her to take the medication. And of course, it turns
Oh,
out
yeah.
all the advice that I got was like, that's an ugly process. Don't do that if you can avoid it. When I got notified that she had taken the medicine and I came back for visiting hours that evening, I started to see Megan again. Up until that point, it had been 5 plus days of feeling like I'm never going to see the Megan
Oh,
that I knew for years ever again. It felt like that Wednesday night during visiting hours was such a point of relief and being like, we're very far from
normal.
normal. Wow, I am not talking to somebody who's actively in delusional states and thinks that
Okay.
we're all out to get her and had a basic understanding of where she was in time and space to a certain extent. That was the biggest relief point for me.
Okay. So no more paranoia or delusion. She was aware of the psych ward, it sounds like.
She was aware she was in the hospital. I'm not sure she fully understood exactly where she was. I mean, I wasn't a big fan of where she was.
Yeah.
It felt dangerous. Maybe she didn't notice it because of her mental state, but I would imagine her start to come back too. You're like, where am I? What is this? Because
Mm,
it doesn't feel like any sort of like hospital scene I've ever seen before. So, yeah,
yeah.
which was really hard as somebody on the outside to see that experience. But
Yeah. You mentioned that you called her parents and they came right away. They came and were able to help, and that probably helped you visit more.
we never missed a visiting session. They had a morning session and then a nighttime visiting hours, each for like an hour and a half, an hour. Never missed one, which was great, but definitely very grateful to her parents, particularly in those early days, who were there to allow me to go do it. I wasn't allowed to bring the kids. They wouldn't let her see the kids.
Oh,
And so
why? Why is that?
I don't totally know. I would guess they didn't feel, I mean, certainly early on, she was safe enough to do so. I think there were also some fears that there could be some triggering effects, but yeah, that was ultimately held out several days later as a reward for her if she could behave
Hmm.
well enough and stop trying to escape Bellevue Psychiatric, that she would be given permission to see the girls.
Bribery.
Exactly. And it worked. It was like it was a needed thing. Like, oh, I can see the girls. Her parents were there. I slept on the couch, on the pull-out couch, and I slept in my bed. With this, keep in mind, this is now two 74-year-olds helping out and doing their part to help us. It was incredibly helpful to have them there. But yeah,
Yeah. How are those visitation hours for you?
and it was really hard work-wise to get there.
You were working through this.
Yeah, I went back to work. I think I took off Monday, maybe. I don't actually know what days I took off, but maybe a day from work. But I kept working. I had to be like very honest with my boss about what was happening. Some people I was very close with, and she's been amazing, but she was mission critical to allowing me to go and see Meg. Because her visiting hours in the morning were like, it was like, I don't know, 11:30 to like 12:45 in the middle of the day. So I
Okay.
then go
Yeah.
across town, Bellevue, to see her, but I needed to leave work in the middle of the day every single day for 2 weeks. I told my boss about this. She was one of like 6 people I told. I was not going to tell the full truth, and then I started sobbing when I started telling her. There's a level of stigma around any kind of mental health crisis, let alone being committed to Bellevue. I didn't tell anybody anything because of like the stigma. It was like shame. It was like embarrassment. It was fear of ramifications for what if I told the truth. A couple of weeks
Hmm.
ago, I went back to the email that I wrote her boss, um,
Oh, Megan's boss.
Megan's boss. So I then
Oh, because
named
you
her.
have to let her work know.
So I had to let her work know. The email chain is completely bonkers because I'm basically like, oh, Megan can't come to work. She's having a medical issue. She'll be out for a couple of days. And they're like, oh, okay, since you're writing, that must be a real problem if she can't write her own email. I'm writing it from her email. Keep a surprise, blah, blah, blah. Can you tell us more? I kind of ghosted them for a while and then wrote, Megan will be out for the foreseeable future and gave them zero information as to
Uh,
what happened. I basically was like, she's alive. And that was basically it. His response was, I'm not sure I know how to respond
to
to
this.
email. See, as the partner, it was like if I, again, it's the same thing with the police. If I tell this guy who she's known for years and he's amazing, and her whole work was amazing at Bank Street at the time, they were incredible. And he's a great person. But I don't know if you tell somebody the truth. By the way, your employee's now locked up
In a psych unit,
and
yeah.
she's like seemingly trying to hurt herself or maybe others. Does her job exist when she is better? I don't know. And with everybody, I had such a love, fear, like uncertainty and sort of shame and embarrassment of what could happen if you tell people information from her boss to my boss to friends to family that I decided it was best to say as little as possible or absolutely nothing. And that was really, really hard. And the 5 or 6 people I did tell, of course, unsurprisingly, I was a fucking mess. I would say about 2 words and then I would start just exploding in tears. I found that I would have to somehow get the words out like, everybody's alive. Megan is alive. And everybody was like, oh my God, is Megan dead? I literally couldn't get the words out. It was so traumatic. And I needed to get that out first and then start crying and work through it. The stigma of this really took over me, wanting to keep this as under wraps as possible.
The 5 or 6 people you told were, it sounds like, out of necessity.
Yep. Her parents and her sister had a necessity. Her sister Holly, who ultimately came
Mm.
to help. Our friends in Boston who had 2 kids at the same ages as ours, partly because they're our best friends, but partly because her dad is like a sort of a renowned psychiatrist and
Oh,
was looking for anything to help. So they were our best friends. So felt comfortable telling them, but also like I couldn't tolerate another day of Megan being at Bellevue because I just hated it so much and was hoping I don't know what I was hoping he'd be able to do.
had strings to like,
Do something to help pull her out of there and get her to
yeah.
Cornell or to a better facility, which didn't come to fruition, although he was very kind and helpful in other ways. But yeah, most people, it was out of necessity. And I told one of our other best friends who lived around the corner because we saw him almost every day and it would have been impossible to like,
Not
where,
share.
where's Megan? So yeah, it was like, how can I tell as few people as possible about it?
Okay, how else did you go about seeking help for yourself?
I didn't do anything for myself, which was like a huge mistake. I would do my normal things, which were I would try to exercise and,
Hmm.
care for myself. I have such a vivid memory of just like I was running down the East River Park, and I just was like, I need to exercise because my eye was twitching 24 hours a day. I couldn't stop. I was so stressed out. And I just remember trying to run, but I couldn't even, I just remember just like laying down on like on the river park and just sobbing and just being like, I don't know what I'm even doing anymore. What is this world? I literally don't know what this world even is.
Wow, your own little existential crisis.
Oh yeah, totally. Just laying down in the East River Park. That's totally normal.
Like people running by.
7 o'clock in the morning, and of course, in classic New York City fashion, no one stops. This is pretty common here in New York.
Oh, that's
But
sad.
yeah, it was like exercise. I tried to bury myself a bit in work, but I was finding that to be counterproductive. It was like taking me away from the kids. I really tried to bury myself in the kids for sure. I only went to see a therapist probably 2 or 3 weeks after Megan got discharged from Bellevue. And that was because she made me go see a therapist.
Okay.
And I wish I had started to see a therapist. If this happened on a Saturday, I wish I'd had an appointment on a Monday. And
Mm.
it was so badly needed to be able to talk very openly about all of my feelings and process what happened. That's somebody that's not a family member, somebody that's not
Mm-hmm.
somebody that's going to be like, a third party objective listener and who can help coach me through how to handle my thoughts, feelings, and emotions. But I let those thoughts, emotions, and feelings and the stress just take me over for, what is that, probably 4 to 6 weeks.
It's a long time
It's a long
to
time.
be holding all that.
It was a long time. I can't say enough about how helpful going to therapy was to work through it. It wasn't just my fear for Megan's health and safety and talking through that, but also I was pretty angry at Megan for what felt like ditching me and her family and leaving us high and dry and putting us all into this situation. And so there was a lot to work through with my own how to process what I felt like somebody abandoned us, but they didn't just leave. It was like handing you a big pile of shit and then leaving. And then you're like, oh, thanks. Now I got to deal with this too. It was just too much to work through. And I wanted a partner to help me navigate the hardest thing in my life. And my partner left me at that time.
She was inaccessible.
And I was like, the person I would go to be like, how the fuck do we get through this? Is now completely unavailable and is counterproductive, frankly, to talk to. And I held on to that anger and frustration with her. When she came back from Bellevue, it was just like, oh, can you take the trash out, or change this diaper? I'm gonna be like, really? You're gonna ask me to change a diaper? Like, girl, like, are you kidding me right now? I never said anything. But what I worked through a lot in therapy was I really wanted to play this trump card constant. And obviously that's very unhealthy to have that sitting inside your chest forever. So my care became that, and that going to therapy and seeing a therapist, every week. I think in the first couple of weeks, I think I went twice a week. It was an absolute savior for me.
Did any of that facilitate conversations between you and Megan, or was it mostly like, I just need to articulate these feelings, process them, and let them go?
A little bit of both. I think it was more like I need to process these. I remember a therapist being like, I would be like, I'm angry at Megan. And then I judge that I was angry at Megan. And then I would judge judgment. And she's like, feel your feelings. It's okay to be upset with your wife. You went through a lot. Like, you suffered these things. Where you get into trouble is when you start stacking these feelings on top of each other. She's like, feel the feeling you have and embrace that. And so that was my biggest thing, was like really sort of taking that in. It's okay to be frustrated that you feel abandoned in this moment.
Yeah.
Or the person sort of wronged you in some sort of way. It doesn't mean you can't work through it. It's just the opposite.
Yeah.
We'll allow you to work through it. And so I think it definitely did spark some conversations. But I would say I think this whole experience more broadly has really left us in awe of the power of mental health experts to help people, both in like acute traumatic moments, but also like everyday things. And I think we have what came out of some of my therapy sessions, plus all of her psychiatry and therapy things that she was going through, was like an openness of help open like lines of communication, I think, between us on how we're feeling in any given moment or time. And just like this deep appreciation for, oh, I mean, we were like pretty obnoxious now to like family and friends who are going through things. I mean, like,
Therapy.
there are people who help navigate. And I can tell you, as somebody who did not want to go, I didn't want to go to therapy. Like, again, stigma.
Yeah.
And while once we have people who've lost family members or are going through hard moments, it's like, actually, this stuff really works and it's super helpful.
Quick insert on advocating for therapy. We've talked about a meta-analysis on the effectiveness of therapy in a previous episode that I will include in the show notes here as well, if anyone needs fodder to sell it to family members who are resisting. A large meta-analysis looked at over 250 studies. So these were real-world therapy sessions, not lab experiments, and they looked at pre and post. Usually that was the design, looking at how psychological treatments impacted things like depression, anxiety, or general distress. Across the board, therapy works. It does work. And results do vary a bit depending on where and how therapy is delivered. So some core takeaways: qualified therapists get better results than trainees. This is probably applicable across fields for the most part. Cognitive behavioral therapy tends to be the most effective, especially for anxiety and general distress, compared to unstructured approaches. CBT is a structured, goal-oriented form of talk therapy that helps an individual identify and change unhelpful patterns in their thoughts and behaviors to improve mood and coping. People with milder symptoms show bigger improvements than people with severe issues who might need hospitalization or more maybe combination therapy with other modalities. And interestingly, across the world, or a look at effectiveness globally, UK-based programs often show stronger effects than those in other regions such as Asia or mainland Europe, which I found interesting. So again, these are pre to post comparisons, not randomized controlled trials, so they don't prove cause and effect, but they give us strong evidence that psychotherapy, particularly CBT, can make a difference for those struggling with general distress, depression, or anxiety. Now let's hear Colin's reflections on how their relationship was impacted from before and after postpartum psychosis.
I would say that it's so much stronger and better because of what she/we went through. And by that, it's funny, we often talk about this. Was postpartum psychosis awful? Absolutely horrendous? Yes. If we could choose to not do it, not have that have happened to us, would we choose that? The answer is no. Like it was awful and terrible. And yet I do feel like we as individuals and as a couple came out stronger. Our line of communication with one another is so much stronger in that we're able to really share how we feel on any given topic at any time. And that turns out, if you have like open and direct communication with your partner,
That helps.
it can go a really long way. Whether it be small things like, hey, I'm having a hard time right now. I need to go for a run because I'm having a hard time processing this. Okay, great. Then we come back and we can have a conversation. Or it's, whatever the topic is, big or small, having that very clear communication so no one is holding things in, I think has been incredibly helpful for our relationship. And I think we're just much more, again, as individuals, as a couple, much more compassionate towards one another, but also towards ourselves in a way that we were not before, which is the sort of gets to the point of like, what do we do it all over again? It's like, weirdly, yeah.
Weirdly, yes. Is there anything about your experience that you feel doesn't get talked about as much that feels important?
I mean, it sort of touches on the shame and stigma around postpartum psychosis specifically, but like acute mental health crises generally. I had never experienced something so big and serious going on in my life, and yet like I felt ashamed to even talk about it. And
Yeah.
to some of my closest friends and family, I was like, well, I'm not going to tell these people. And it's like, that's not healthy. And I think that like, from a partner perspective, being able to really understand that this person has gone through something and maybe they don't want to talk about it, that's okay. Helping to create safe environments for people to ensure that like, yeah, it's okay to talk about these things. Life is really hard and this is a really hard thing to go through. And that it's not this like, we have to like hush, hush, brush it under the rug, keep it a secret from everybody else thing. I just feel like I don't think that gets enough attention for like how hard that is as a partner to navigate that. Um,
Mm. So creating spaces for partners and
yeah,
anybody navigating caregiving through a psychiatric crisis. Is that right?
yeah, yes. And I think relatedly is the sort of the table flipping over scenario, which I mentioned
Mm.
before, which is like maybe this all just gets back to like all partners and people around this need a therapist. It's so intense, and I'm sure other partners see this as well. The flipping of the switch from what feels like the person you know to a completely different person is so fast
Fast. Yeah.
that it's hard. It's really hard. It shakes you to your core and being like, I don't know what is happening. It's really scary. I think that just being named as a core thing that people who are partners or around people who go through PPP are just like helpful to be aware of, that it's so jarring and so intense and confusing. I wish I knew earlier on, had some clear sense of steps and things to do to take care of myself and process it, because it was
Yeah.
really, really hard.
If you could change the way systems respond to families dealing with psychiatric crisis, including postpartum psychosis, what would you change?
Maybe this is because I'm like deep in the weeds on some of this stuff, but in knowing some of the details, 10 years on,
Hmm.
if we could put this as an actual diagnosis in the DSM, it would give like ability to actually treat postpartum psychosis in a clear way and provide that sort of guidance as to what they need to be looking for, as to constantly misdiagnosing this as, we didn't know until Megan saw a perinatal psychiatrist who was like, oh, this is postpartum psychosis. Everybody else was like, well, she's maybe bipolar. We don't really know. That's not helpful. The ability to actually diagnose this in a real way, I think would go a really long way toward it. I think,
Hmm.
from other sort of systems-based things, like, I mean, sure, there's a lot of stuff we think we could do, like giving people paid leave to spend time with their kids and not be under stress from work. And so there's a lot we could do. I mean, there's a lot of things, but I just think that like being clear with a diagnosis up front goes a really long way. And
Yeah.
because I think the trickle down effect from there, right, to all like, well, it depends what kind of care you should get, mother baby units they can be in, and other things, as opposed to being like, oh, let's just like lock this person up at Bellevue because we think she's manic bipolar, or whatever it is. We're like, that's not what
Uh-huh.
it is, and you guys got it wrong. And so I just think it's like it seems simple to say the diagnosis having it be official, but I just think like it's a trickle down effect of the care that it can provide. I think is
And the resources, the
yes,
education, interventions, even like family facing
yeah,
education.
yes, 100%.
Yeah. Um, so the New York Times article that came out this week, can we talk about that for a
Yeah,
second? Did you read it?
I did. I wrote an LTE in response to it last night.
Are you comfortable sharing your thoughts on it?
Do you want me to read you what I wrote?
Yeah,
It probably won't get published because why would it?
it probably will. Let's put that out.
Okay, so this was my 198 word response to the New York Times.
To a 200 word limit.
Yeah, exactly.
Nice.
This is like, it's funny. Megan was like, do you want me to write something for you? I was like, I can write my own thing. Also, your voice is not my voice. I have my own perspective. I write differently. So my response to the New York Times article was, calling 911 on my wife was the scariest, most traumatic thing I've had to do in my life. I knew what the consequences could be. She could lose custody of the girls, but the consequences of inaction were far worse. She could die and or kill our kids. I'm so glad I did. I think it saved all of our lives. It wasn't for months and several psychiatrists later that it was properly diagnosed as postpartum psychosis, a highly dangerous and highly treatable illness. But every day that the precious DSM can't figure out which exact chapter of the quote book to put postpartum psychosis under, the guise of quote doing no harm, makes me nauseous just to write that. We are risking the lives of moms, kids, and families across America. Ironically, the inaction is killing us. Putting
Mm.
PPP in the DSM will help legitimize and normalize the illness, provide clear guidance to doctors, increase awareness and funding for research, and create clear pathways to getting moms better before it becomes deadly. Or we can keep doing nothing and accept the deadly consequences. Either way.
That's a great ending. Either way, that's an excellent 198 word response. I think it will get published. That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's
I
my
mean,
take.
we'll see. We'll see. But yeah, my takeaway is basically just like, oh God, this is why I said like the precious DSM. They're being so precious about these things. And I get it. You should be thoughtful and deliberate. And we shouldn't be rushing things, but it's like this isn't a rush. This has been known for like such a long period of time. And we're gonna sit here and being like, well, we don't quite know what chapter to put it into, so we're not gonna do it. It's like, okay, so that's now preventing thousands of people from getting the proper care that they need and millions of dollars of research funding that could be unlocked by making this what everyone clearly knows is a real thing that needs to have its own diagnoses. Like,
Mm-hmm.
it just feels like they're letting the perfect be the enemy of the good here. And again, I get it. You want to be intentional about these things. I just think that
It needs to be done. Need to get it in there.
there are real world consequences with like lives at stake when we're sitting here hemming and hawing about, oh, I hope we can make this thing perfect.
Yeah. Okay. Final question. What advice would you give to a partner who's recently navigated postpartum psychosis?
One, you're not alone. You might feel like you're by yourself and no one else has been through it, and every situation is different. But there is a community of people who have also been through this, and it's like, it's horrible and brutal and sometimes deadly, but you can get through it. Go see a therapist. Any partner of somebody who has experienced postpartum psychosis has been through an incredible amount, regardless of the details of what each situation is. We can all agree they have been through an absolutely brutal and often horrendous journey. And you can't solve that and fix that in your own mind alone. Go see somebody and get help for yourself. Like, what is it on the airplane? Put your mask on before helping others. Like, you can't help other people until you take care of yourself. Seeing a mental health professional was truly like life-changing for me. I highly recommend it. If there's one action to take, go and talk to somebody to help you process what you just experienced.
Big +1 to talking with a mental health professional if you've been through something intense or distressing, or if you're generally feeling anxious or depressed or distressed. There is help available to you. Thank you to Colin for coming on again to talk more about his experience as a partner. The fear, the anger, the impossible decisions, and the long tail of processing that comes after the crisis has passed. Postpartum psychosis doesn't impact one person alone. It can break open a family, and healing isn't just about discharge papers or symptom resolution. It's about rebuilding trust, rebuilding a life, repairing relationships, and moving forward after something you never would have chosen, but can learn a lot of beautiful things from. On crisis management, I was wondering about this, how in previous stories we've heard about community crisis teams coming to your home to support in the acute crisis. And of all the places you would think New York City would have this, and turns out there is a text and call line. It's 988 for New York State that can get you a crisis team within 2 hours. I had no idea this existed. I've never heard of it. I was not aware of it myself. And so I've just been reflecting on how amazing it would be if at hospital discharge you were given a page of resources local to your area of who you could reach out to, starting with lactation support. I remember actually this being in my little folder we took home, but including mental health crisis or just general mental health support for your region. It could also be something that families build into a postpartum plan, just to be aware of what is available to you in your area. So anyway, that's something that I was thinking on from this conversation. We talked about a recent New York Times article that I wanted to provide some context for. The article is titled, "Will Psychiatry's Bible Add a Postpartum Psychosis Diagnosis?" I'll include the link in the show notes. Dr. Burgink is a core interviewee. There's a survivor and also one of the chairs of the committee for the DSM revisions, or I guess the next iteration of the DSM. They are discussing in the article whether postpartum psychosis should have its own diagnosis in the DSM. Some postpartum psychosis advocates were disappointed that the article wasn't more clearly stating the need for postpartum psychosis to have a distinct diagnosis in the DSM. I have sat squarely in that camp of feeling like we clearly need a better definition to have better understanding of what this is. Better definitions can lead to better data. Better data can drive research awareness and resources, and families / our systems need that. I do wish the article had pulled more of the complexity referenced by one of the doctors who sits on the chair of the DSM revision committee. They sort of nod to it, but they don't talk about it. And I guess it's sort of a flag for me if I am thinking through or learning about something and I can't really understand a perspective. It's an invitation for me to step into empathy. So I've tried to step into empathy there to wrap my head around why they are reluctant to add it to the DSM. And there is concern that, I mean, as Colin was talking about, that maybe if the definition is lumped together and not accurate, that people could be misdiagnosed or mistreated as far as treatment plans. And I can understand the argument that postpartum psychosis doesn't always look the same and there may not be one single pathway. Some cases are more closely related to like bipolar mania and others are more like a brief psychotic episode. So reflecting on my own experience, I am grateful that my care team catered my treatment to my flavor of postpartum psychosis. But I also still think that having a clear definition is just, it's not something we can, and putting it off is not helping things. So maybe the answer isn't as simple as I have thought, but what definitely feels clear is families deserve clarity. We need clarity. Partners need support. And moms need care that is precise, compassionate, and grounded in research and lived experience. Currently, we are missing the mark. Particularly the DSM is missing the mark, I would say. So something needs to give. I think we need to get it in there. And I would love to understand more from the DSM revision committee about what they want to see in order to get it in. What is driving the years and years and years of delays. If this episode resonated with you, consider sharing it with someone who could maybe hear that they are not alone. And that's a wrap. Take care, be kind to your mind, and thanks for listening.